Good afternoon. I'm Tricia Serio. I'm a professor of biochemistry and the provost at the University of Washington. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. I'd like to start first with our land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Thank you again for being here. Last year, during her annual address, President Kelsey challenged us to ask ourselves, what does the world need from this enduring institution in order to meet both the urgency of this moment and the challenges of coming eras that we can only imagine? But she didn't just challenge us with this question. She noted that it's not enough to ask the question. We must lead in answering it. And that is what I so value and respect about the University of Washington, is our willingness to wade into those waters. This is really the goal that we've set for ourselves as we begin to frame how we can leverage the unique strengths of the University of Washington. And for me, this is our talented students, faculty, and staff to lead conversations around the most complex issues that face our world today, and those that require really broad perspectives to find solutions. In my own annual address last year, I highlighted 4 of these areas where we already have significant momentum that emerged from the work that I've been doing with the deans and chancellors. Those 4 areas are climate solutions, democracy, behavioral health, and artificial intelligence. All of these areas are moving forward through various working groups, and I look forward to having conversations like this around other areas as they mature. But today we're here to talk about artificial intelligence. When President Kelsey and I appointed the AI task force earlier this year, we asked them to think big, and boy, did they. They've proposed a broad vision where the University of Washington leverages its leadership in AI research to transform the success of our students and their experience at the university, to make previously unimaginable advances across all of our disciplines, and to enable these core functions of our mission through a reimagined administrative structure and leading-edge infrastructure. But I want to be clear, this vision is not a mandate. It's a suggestion on how we might organize the considerable work on AI and with AI that is already happening all across our campuses. And I want to be really clear that I think this framing, that it's a vision and not a mandate, is important. Because right now, the work that's happening in AI all across the university is happening in a non-coordinated way. And something that really is on my mind about that is that we aren't in a space where we can currently ensure that we extend equitable access to this technology to those who want to interface with it through both their work and education and in their scholarly activities. And I want to be clear, I want to emphasize that point, those who want to engage with it. I also want to be clear that AI has the potential to impact every aspect of our lives and work. And it's for that reason that we really need to hear from everyone before we make decisions about next steps. And these next steps really have to be tailored to how best to meet the needs and aspirations of everyone at the University of Washington, who, again, want to engage with this technology. And your voice and your feedback will be taken seriously. That's why we're reaching out to you today through this town hall and future town halls, the survey that's in the field. I really encourage you to share your perspectives from every corner of the university. Most importantly, I want to encourage us not to get ahead of ourselves. I'd offer that we should think about the task force report as a framework from which we can commit to an initial direction. And once we synthesize all this feedback, we're going to need all the normal processes that already exist at the campus to engage in and define the implementation of how we go forward. And that includes the faculty senate councils and other governance structures that extend all the way down to the department level that are already in place throughout the university. I truly believe and respect these processes, that they are how we put the unique stamp of UW on any plans that we have, whether it be about AI or anything else, because it's the people of the University of Washington that define what we do and how we do it. And so with that, I want to just say that I'm very grateful to the task force to getting us to this point of framing this discussion. And I'm grateful to all of you for engaging in it. Okay, and with that, I will hand it over to the co-chairs of the task force, Dean Anin Day of the iSchool and Vice President Andreas Bowman of University IT. Thank you both.
Thank you, Provost Serio, for those opening remarks. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us in this first of several town halls that we will host to discuss artificial intelligence. We are in a period of time when artificial intelligence is all around us, and things are changing very rapidly in the development of AI, including how different groups at the UW are engaging with it and adopting it in their daily work. The purpose of this first town hall is to dig into what artificial intelligence is, and to demystify it a bit. Talk about the opportunities it brings, along with the challenges it offers for the University of Washington community and beyond. We want to have an open dialogue about AI, what it means broadly for our society, but also for the mission of the UW and the work that our students, staff, and faculty engage in. If you have specific questions about the AI Task Force report and recommendations that were made, please do respond to the survey as Provost Serio requested. And please know that there will be additional town halls that you can participate in that are related to research, teaching and learning, student success, infrastructure, and administration. The format of today's town hall is as a panel, and we have 5 panelists joining us today. Going in order, we have Min Sun, who is a professor in the College of Education. She is the director of one of the newest centers on campus called Amplify Gain, which is focused on the use of generative AI to enhance math and science teaching and learning in K-12 schools. Pen Moon is the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning and is an affiliate associate professor in history and in the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences at UW-Bothell. Noah Smith is the Amazon Professor of Machine Learning in the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. Noah recently published a paper called Language Models, A Guide for the Perplexed, which I think describes many of us on campus. Chirag Shah is a professor in the Information School, and he is co-founder and co-director of RAISE, the Center on Responsibility in AI Systems and Experiences. And rounding us out, we have Todd Burstein, who is the Chief Medical Informatics Officer for UW Medicine. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today. For those watching, please send your comments and questions to townhall@uw.edu. I'll say that again, townhall@uw.edu. We hope to get to as many of your questions and comments as possible during our panel today, but know that we will be reading all of your questions and comments and sharing them with the Provost's office as well. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to my co-chair for the AI Task Force, Andreas Bowman.
Thank you, Anand. Like Anand said, I'm Andreas Bowman, the Vice President for UW IT, which is the central IT function at the University of Washington. And I'm also the University Chief Information Officer, or CIO. I know we're all here for the dialogue, so we're going to jump right into the questions. We have asked the panelists to keep their answers to about 1 or 2 minutes, as we have a lot of questions to get through. And I will start off by answering one question to one panelist, and then open the floor for other perspectives and thoughts. So with that said, the first question for today is to Noah. And it's a very straightforward one. Artificial intelligence, what is this all about? Noah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me. This is a big and hard and controversial question, but I'll attempt a very concise answer for now. Thanks, Anin, for mentioning our Language Models, A Guide for the Perplexed paper. This is, in fact, a tutorial I wrote with a couple of students last year, and it's designed for a very wide audience. So if you want my longer answer, I would suggest taking a look at that tutorial. So the term artificial intelligence is used by lots of different people, and they don't all mean the same thing, and they certainly haven't meant the same thing since the field emerged in the 1950s. When we talk about AI, I urge everyone to remember that it doesn't refer to any specific technology or capability or product. just like the term intelligence is used to refer to a nebulous set of characteristics in people and in animals. Further, the relationship between natural and artificial intelligence is hotly contested. So while we may be inclined to draw a parallel between the two, it's not always straightforward to think about that connection. Okay, so there's no single agreed upon technical definition for AI, but in general, it tends to track with whatever computational tools are currently available that seem to be on the cutting edge of producing behavior that we, regular people, associate with intelligence, either on their own or in collaboration with their human users. Artificial intelligence is a very active and interdisciplinary area of research, and I want to say the University of Washington is a world leader in this research field. And you can find AI researchers working on both independently intelligent agents as well as tools that aim to augment human intelligence. Today, I think when many people think about AI, what comes into their minds are systems built on language models, typically with a chat-like interface and now often augmented with the ability to work with images or maybe sound, and with access to other information tools like search engines that we don't usually consider intelligent on their own. And that's where we are today. But I think tomorrow, the definition will look completely different.
Thank you very much, Noah, for that answer. I'll open the floor to any of the other panelists who want to share their perspective or thoughts.
Yeah, if I can quickly jump in, I think Noah did a fantastic job, covering the great, definitional, things with AI. I agree that what we've seen over the decades is the notion of what intelligence is, what AI is, keeps changing. And typically what we observe is the problems that we think are hard, problems that only humans can solve, are used as a measure of what AI could do. But the moment those problems are addressed in AI, they no longer remain within AI, or they if an artificial entity could do that, we think that that's must not have been as hard as we thought. And so some of those things get moved out of AI because it doesn't impress us anymore. So I think we keep changing the definition as well as the goalpost of what AI is and what it could do. So again, I will emphasize what Noah already mentioned, that this notion of intelligence is very fluid. One of the challenges, we don't even have a good definition of what human intelligence is. And then we try to map to some external entity. So there's a challenge here. But I think it's, on one hand, I would say we shouldn't get bogged down by definitional issues. But on the other hand, I think it's an important discussion because it allows us to also think about ourselves, like what we think about intelligence, the human intelligence as a social construct and so on. So I think there are benefits of discussing it, but at the end of the day, at least personally, I'm interested in computational systems or any systems that are capable, that help us with automation, with augmentation, and improve our lives.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful answer. Anyone else on the panel want to share their thoughts? Okay, we're going to move to the next question, and I'll turn it over to Anand.
Thanks, Andreas. Chirag, the next question is for you. Tell us a little bit about both what excites you about AI and what your concerns are about AI.
So sure, I will give my personal answer, what I'm personally excited about, but then also what in general for all of us, what I'm excited about. Personally, I'm excited about agents. Agents is not a new thing. There have been a lot of waves of agents, many successful, many not. What I'm looking for now is going beyond these agents that can go beyond just generating answers and generating information or recommending information, but actually agents that could take actions. This has been very challenging so far. I mean, there are advancements in robotics and automobiles, industry, but there hasn't been as much widespread in other industries to have autonomous entities that could act on our behalf. Now, this is not just a kind of a pipe dream at this point. Some of these things are becoming possible. It's also not just a nerdy dream that I would say, personally I have. I think there are some great opportunities in areas of, say, accessibility in healthcare. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that I'm more excited about in terms of our collective future, because we know we have limitations in resources in terms of material resources, energy, people. And so some of these technologies, these agents filling that gap. I mean, if you look at things like elder care, some of the accessibility issues. So I'm really excited about what AI could do in those things. Once again, when we think about AI, I know it's easy to think about ChatGPT, but there's a lot more to AI as we know. So I'm excited about those things. Obviously, I'm also very concerned about some of the things. As Anand mentioned in my introduction, I co-direct the Center on Responsibility in AI at UW campus called RAISE. And a lot of these issues that they're not new that have come up, issues of bias, toxicity, hallucination. We recently saw news of people harming themselves with this interactions with chatbots, and there have been multiple cases now at this point. So there's this lack of awareness. There's a lack of education for general people, what AI is capable of doing and what it's not. And so what I'm concerned about is where we take a tool that was designed for X and then use it for Y and Z without proper understanding. That's been problematic. We lack proper oversight. So we lack education, we lack oversight and regulations. And so these things are causing real world harm. So I think there are some real challenges how to do this right. I mean, there's a lot of things that we moved fast and we haven't thought this through. So I hope with my colleagues here, this is what we are trying to do. Like, can we do this in a better, mindful way than simply rushing into it? So I think there are concerns, but there are also some ways to address them, and a lot of us are working on it.
Thank you, Chirag. Any of the other panelists would like to weigh in?
May I chime in and add on to what my colleague just shared? My areas of focus is in education, which is a very specific domain area. In particular, a lot of my work is in K-12 teaching and learning. And so thinking from this one domain perspective to see the opportunities as well as concerns is such a privilege, because what excites me most about possible AI benefit for K-12 teaching and learning is what Chirag also mentioned about the agent. Like, they could potentially serve as a third agent in the classroom. In the traditional classroom settings, we have teachers and students are the two agents who interact with one another, create learning opportunities, environment for learners to grow and to gain knowledge and skill, and social skills included. With the third agent AI, we can imagine in a classroom setting, we have three agents now. We have AI, we have teacher, we have students dynamically interacting with one another. So you can imagine the classroom, there are going to be three attributes or features that we have not observed in the past. One will be the interaction going to become a whole lot more dynamic. It's not like teachers plant the material and bring it to students. The material and learning opportunities can be created in that moment when teachers and students interact with one another. And the personalization means that it won't be one standardized curriculum for everyone, because we know every student have their unique needs and sort of learning trajectory. We also know that every teacher differs from one another, right? How to make the classroom interaction more personalized, that's another huge attribute in the future classroom. The third one will be collaborative learning. in the field of education, we always wanted to accomplish this goal, right? It's not the student teachers, two people's responsibility. Is actually need the entire village to raise a child. And so with the artificial intelligence as a third agent, we may be able to make learning a whole lot more collaborative, that you have kids, teacher, parents, and other stakeholders all seamlessly be able to participate in a kid learning journey. So if done well, I can see AI can amplify both the quality and equity of K-12 education, and probably also apply to some degree to higher ed. However, like our colleagues, I also have some concerns through our interaction with many teachers and students. We observe this emotional AI adoption journey. At the beginning, there is fear of AI may taking their jobs. What do I do with this new technology? To the stage, once they start to get hands-on and see how a simple AI tool can help them simplify their task, as well as help them used to be like 2 or 3 hours task, and now shrink down to or reduced down to 20, 30 minutes task that they can maintain or even succeed the quality they used to offer to students. And so you got this excitement to the next stage of over rely on technology. That is what I concern the most. Like, how do we develop AI technology as well as to support the adoption in a way that we still amplify human agency, human expertise, human creativity? That's something I've been thinking about.
Thank you, Min.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a brief comment for you all. We started the conversation talking about what AI is, and I think this is really the next question of how should AI be used. For me, I do a lot of historical analogies, and so I'm thinking about the internet when it came to be really in the broad population in the mid-90s. And how it's become really a focus of how we communicate and how we connect. And so the human analogy I would be is it's kind of our senses. It's right. It's what we see. It's what we hear. It's what we speak. It's what we feel. All those types of things that the internet is doing. AI is really about the brain. It's how we understand, how we make associations. And I think thinking about how it's going to be most useful, it is going to be very imperative that we focus on how we integrate this into the tasks that we want to do. So how can AI help us understand, help us create associations that will make us more efficient, will expand the scope of what it is that we can understand and associate together, all those types of things. As far as the risks, I think the analogy is the same. We've seen the same thing with the internet. If we connect things in the wrong way, if we connect to things that aren't true, connect to things that are being used for manipulation, we end up with bad results. And so I think it becomes even more imperative when we start talking about understanding and associations to understand that if this is going to be used in ways that are intentionally or unintentionally going to create misunderstanding and misassociations, then that is a significant thing that we need to pay attention to.
Great. Thank you all.
I wondered if I could I
Please,
also
Ken.
chime in? I'm excited about some aspects of AI, and is really interested to hear Min-Sun's talk about AI fostering collaboration. One of my concerns about the intersection between AI and teaching is an emphasis on AI-driven personalized learning. And there are a lot of risks in personalized learning, one of which is that it will involve even more intensive tracking of student data and behavior. But I also worry about emphasizing personalized learning, because I think it exacerbates a bigger problem that we have in education, and that is the increasing atomization of students. And so relying on a third agent or a chat bot to do the work of engaging with students has some risks. And I worry about that. So I'll just put that out there.
Thanks, Pen. Andreas, over to you.
Thanks, Anand. And Min, we are going back to you. And this is another really broad question. So please feel free to dive in on any of these subtopics. But the question is, what are opportunities in AI for the research, teaching, and student success missions of the University of Washington?
Thank you so much for this question, and also thank you, Pam, and point that out. Indeed, we are highlighting some of the potential benefit at the same time, with the condition if done well, right? And there are many things I feel like we need to be very thoughtful, and that I would actually think create opportunity for us to engage in. I feel like both the opportunity and challenges create a new line of research and teaching. And I think at the same time, community services work for us to do as a collective together. And I'm going to offer a very narrow perspective from my own work and from the Amplify Learn.ai Center. And as you see on my background as Amplify Learn, and Amplify Gain is a new center awarded by the US Department of Education, which is nested within this broader initiative that we already have in place on campus. So the center's work focus on leverage the latest technology of AI to amplify both the quality and equity of teaching and learning. Again, we're primarily focused on K-12, but some of the things I talk about potentially can be extrapolated to higher ed as well. So this center, we have 4 strands of work. The first strand of work is research. So we do specialized AI development and technology application offering as well. So here we embedded effective teaching and learning knowledge and best practices based on the research literature, research studies into the latest AI technology development, so we can develop a more specialized AI technology. And the second is we study trying to identify what are those tech features that really amplify humans' critical thinking, broaden the equitable access, regardless of students' language, disability status, their family income, their race, ethnicity. How do we make everyone to be able to take advantage of what AI can offer? And the last one is we study about the implementation, because creating a tool itself or creating technology itself won't transform and bring the benefit we're talking about today. We need to see how that adopt in the actual authentic school settings. So we do case studies, we go in to work with schools and districts together to sort of discuss the things, both the opportunity and concerns we discussed in this panel so far. So that is one strand of work. The second strand of work we do is we do technology development and spin-off. Colleague AI is one of the spin-off from the center's work, and as a commercializable product is currently being utilized by thousands of educators nationwide. And then the third and fourth strand of work is a new strand of work, I would say, because of the AI innovation, the technology evolution, is we do training and we offer training to researchers as well as education technology developers. We also offer free webinars. Every month we offer free webinar and in-person trainings to school districts. We also do policy outreach and offer our technical assistance to local and state policymakers. So let me pause there and invite my panelists to offer other perspectives or their line of work.
And Min, thank you so much. Before we open the floor, I just want to remind everyone, maybe you joined late, the townhall@uw.edu is the right place to send all of your questions. We have received audience questions already. Appreciate that very much. And again, it's townhall@uw.edu. With that, panelists, other thoughts?
I think there's a clear opportunities to advance the teaching mission of the university. Our teaching mission calls us to help students become independent, critical, and analytical thinkers. And I think we have the opportunity to exploit AI to help us work in ways that align with what we already know about how people learn. And I use that word exploit intentionally because I think up to this point, I'm a little concerned about how the focus of conversations about AI and teaching have largely been about our need to ensure that students are marketable in an AI world. And this isn't unimportant, but I think this orientation positions teaching in the service of AI rather than AI in the service of teaching. And I think we actually do have opportunities to reframe the discussion, particularly around teaching and learning and AI, in ways that acknowledge that in these conversations, AI doesn't matter as much as learning. And so, for example, we actually heard from some faculty yesterday in a panel that we hosted here at the Center for Teaching and Learning, that instructors are already using AI's generative capabilities, its ability to quickly generate ideas and iterate on those ideas, to refine assignments and to quickly put case studies and multiple ways of looking at things in front of students. And this, I think, aligns well with what we know about how people learn. So, for example, we know that conventionally aged college students come to us primarily as dualistic thinkers, and it's our job to help them develop the ability to think in more complex and nuanced ways. And AI can help us do that. And you don't have to be a computer scientist to use AI to help you do that. So, for example, with really good prompting, generative AI is really good at coming up with multiple alternative scenarios and diverse case studies in the blink of an eye. And we can quickly put these in front of students and ask them to evaluate their usefulness and their strengths. And this is just terrific for students' intellectual development. They encounter alternate perspectives, which push against their habits of either-orism. We ask them to reason their way through these perspectives, which force them to wrestle with complexity and engage in higher order thinking. And here, I also want to say that AI's shortcomings are a strength in a teaching context. So its unreliability and its lack of credibility breadcrumbs actually make it a terrific tool for prompting students to think critically about the integrity of information and arguments. So I think it is useful in advancing learning at the UW.
Thank you very much, Pen. Appreciate that. Other panelists want to share their thoughts.
And I quickly chime in and offer almost a very similar example of what Pen just mentioned, but in the K-12 classroom. So we have one teacher who collaborating with us on colleague AI's development. And he has been, he's in the middle school, teach, in 1 week, he interacted over 100 middle school students in math. And so he teaches both basic math and advanced math in that middle school. And so traditionally, he spent a lot of time grading, formative assessment, and behind the desk, away from students, 100 students, as you can imagine. And nowadays, he uses our tool. He created a rubric, because traditionally, he could not afford, in terms of time and energy, to do rubric-based grading, sort of based on students' mastery level to offer students feedback, right? So he just marks students' work. And now with our tool, he is able to quickly design like a standard-based, mastery-based grading rubric for one mathematical task, which is more complex mathematical tasks than multiple choice, right? And then he offered to students, and then he asked students to use our AI to self grade and get feedback, because he gave both the rubric as well as the AI to students, so students can self-judge if they agree or disagree with AI's response. AI at this stage, at least the AI we utilize, it has a lot of limitations, particularly with regard to math education, like solving mathematical problems and be able to reasoning through a complex task, which actually involve like a real world application of math concept. So then in class, he asked all the students to bring the AI response. Of course, the students can submit multiple times and just bring the final version of AI's response or feedback to the student. And then he talked through with each one of the students. Instead of like use the time to grade, he used the time to interact with the students. Ask the students, why do you agree? Why do you disagree? You have to justify your argument, right? It used to be like a simple calculation procedural task, now become what we call a higher order thinking, in the sense that students have to explain, students have to learn how to self-advocate, students have to learn about making an argument based on evidence. So I found that example very similar to what Penn just shared about in higher ed.
Thank you, Min. Appreciate that. My next question is posed to Todd. Todd, I'm curious what you see the potential impact of AI is in the UW's broader mission of service. We've just heard, a large conversation around how it can be used for K-12 education. But if we think about patient care or regional economic impact, could you speak to the impact sort of in that broader mission?
Yeah, I think we really need to think about how we will use AI. And so instead of thinking about it as a feature or a capability, I think it's really important to try and think about it in the workflow of what it is that we do. So that could be how we care for patients, how we teach residents to care for patients, how we organize supply chain, how we build engineering projects. There could be all kinds of different things about what it is your workflow that you're working on, right? And in order to accomplish that workflow, there's a level of understanding about the different components that are needed to be able to solve that, as well as how those components are connected and associated with one another. So that is really where the generative AI excels. When you start playing around with this area, it seems like magic to start with. And it's important to understand it is not magic, it is math. It is simply doing a statistical association of one concept with another concept based on how it learned those concept associations in the model that it was trained on. And so that's how we function as humans. You think about it, during our childhood as we grow up, and the knowledge that we gain, it's through making associations. I'm hungry, I need to eat food, right? It's an association, right? And you expand that and expand that and expand that as you gain in your education, as you gain in your career and what it is that you do. All of those things become part of the workflows that you do. And now we're given this tool that says, we don't have to depend on just what we understand and the associations that we have learned. We have the ability to look at that from a global standpoint of all the associations that this model was trained on, all the connections that this model was trained on. And that, I think, really will open up the door for us to be able to do workflows in different ways and more efficient ways. So I think really that's the excitement. It's like I said, again, it's also the danger, right? Because you need to make sure that you're understanding that this is how the model was trained and how you're asking the question. If you ask the question differently, you're going to get a different answer. If you train the model differently, you're going to get a different answer, because that you're creating different mathematical statistics in being able to ask that different question and train that different model. So that can be used great to explore the non-dualities of things that we've talked about, but it can also be misdirected, again, both intentionally and unintentionally, and give you consequences that are more concerning about, may take your workflows in directions that you don't want to go. I'll just give you one quick example from the coding world, right? So people are using AI to generate code for creating computer science projects, including out in industry. Well, somebody maliciously built a model that also put a virus in that. So when they brought the code back in, it also brought the virus back in. So, this is the type of thing. We need to be careful and also creative at the same time.
Thanks, Todd. Any of our other panelists want to weigh in on this question or respond to Todd?
Yeah, if I can jump in. So I think a couple of things. UW has tremendous potential, tremendous amount of opportunities for, especially for our students, our faculty. And I also think has a responsibility as a public institution to do certain things that are touching on not just research, but also the education and service and leadership components. So I'll give you a couple of examples. On the education side, I think we have a lot of tech industry around us, but they have their own agenda, right? What they're doing and how they're doing and why they're doing. We could be the standard bearer of doing this AI responsibly. And so, we have a role to play here. I mean, I was thinking about my neighbor the other day who's retired and who was talking to me, and he's been out like many others out hearing all this buzz about AI and of course using AI and got all this news and stuff. And he was talking about how he would love to come back to UW or find something that will tell him, that will teach him, that will talk to him about what's going on with this AI thing, right? I mean, other than just like what he hears from the news, which sometimes could be biased, sometimes is sensational. What's the real truth behind all of these things? So that's something that I feel not many other institutions could do. That's something that UW is in a position and has the obligation, a responsibility to do. Similarly, when you think about what's happening at the state and the federal level in terms of different legislations, a lot of conversations happening. I know some of us are involved in the AI task force at the Washington state level. We have the responsibility to be part of this, to lead this. And I think there are all these things that are happening or should be happening more even. So UW needs to claim this position and I would say double down on it, on these connections that are outside of UW, but tied to the state of Washington and even beyond.
Thank you, Chirag. Appreciate that very much. And before we get to the audience questions, we have one more question, and this one is for Penn. And as we have learned today, there are a lot of opportunities and excitement around AI, but there's also a need for the responsible and ethical application of AI. So, Penn, from your perspective, what do you see as the top challenges in AI that the UW needs to address through policy, guidelines, or governance?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to this question, so I'm really eager to hear my fellow panelists. But I think that one of the top challenges, and it's been articulated by a number of people today, is that we're walking on constantly shifting sands, and it's really hard to develop policy when things are shifting underneath you. We also have something called academic freedom, and so those two things combined kind of raise in my mind whether or not there is a policy here, right? And I haven't seen a good one at another institution, really, especially regards to teaching. So I think that, if I think what we need is a really flexible stance when it comes to the use of AI at UW. And I think we need to focus on developing guidelines more than anything else. And those guidelines need to rest, and I'm speaking about teaching here, they need to rest on first principles and about what we know about how people learn. And they need to emphasize the need to talk with students about the when, how, and why of using AI. But a policy that seeks to prevent students from using AI, I think, is a losing proposition. And a policy that we can't enforce is not worth having. So I'm really eager to hear what my fellow panelists have to say.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit. I agree a lot, Penelope, what you're saying about it's a shifting landscape and shifting very rapidly. I think, though, we need to think about this in the way we think about other types of technologies as well. So again, I'll go back to the internet, right? When the internet came around, there are certain things that we said, okay, it could do this, but we're not going to do that from a regulatory standpoint, from a safety standpoint, you know, all kinds of other risks that we put into the system, right? And so I think we need to look at it under the same lens, right? And to say, again, AI can do lots of things, and it's actually much more complicated than the simple connections that occur over the internet, right? And I'll just give you a quick example of that, right? If you go to some website and it's got some crazy conspiracy theory, it's pretty easy to understand, hey, this is a crazy website with a crazy conspiracy theory on there, right? When you're dealing with AI, because it's trained on the model, everything that it generates seems somehow reasonable. Because the model is somehow reasonable, right? And so being able to pick out what is useful information, what is not useful information is much more challenging. And so I think we need to be really careful about that, because it then, as you start to abut boundaries of regulatory things, so you can think privacy, you can think confidentiality, you can think legal things like copyright infringement, or I mean, you can just go on and on and on. But we live in a land of laws, right? And I think the first thing that we should do is say, whatever the AI is doing, it just like any other technology, it's got to live in the land where we respect the regulations and the laws of what's going on.
Thank you, Todd, and appreciate that answer very much. So Anand, I'm going to turn over to you, and we'll get to our audience questions.
Yeah, one of the questions from the audience is about the role of digital twins. So how can AI be used in research for simulation so that we're doing less human or animal experimentation? Who wants to take that on first?
I can start a little bit. So one of the things we have at UW Medicine is called the WISH Lab, which is a simulation lab. We do a lot of training in the simulation lab, from how to do medical procedures to how to teach patients different things. And a lot of this in the past would have been kind of manually done, where we had to create individual scenarios and models and whatnot. And now we're starting to get into the world of using AI to augment the process of creating these types of simulations, so that we can do the training. We can even go beyond training. So if somebody has a surgery that's coming up that's going to be particularly complicated, they can take that into the simulation lab and do that with AI to try and simulate, what is the surgery going to look like? What if this happens during the surgery and there's complications, so that we can understand how we would respond to that. And then AI can even feedback what the responses typically would be in that situation, because again, it has this understanding of the connections that occur based on how it was trained. So I think there are lots of opportunities, and that's just in one area in medicine.
And if I can tag along to add that I'm also very excited about this digital twin idea. I mean, some of my work on agents, this is what we are trying to do, where essentially these agents are what will represent the user going out and doing things on their behalf. As maybe you saw the news, Anthropic, recently released this thing where the agent browses the internet on your behalf. That all sounds exciting, but I also want to caution that there are challenges, there are problems there, and we've already seen it in our own work, and there are things, of course, coming out other places too, where these things, essentially you're giving up your agency as you allow these agents to do things on your behalf. So while they may save you time, they may save you some effort, but a lot of things are still unclear in terms of how much agency they should have, who's responsible when something goes wrong, how do you deal with this lot of trade-offs like personalization versus privacy, and so on. And so that's why there are technical challenges for doing this, but there are also these non-technical, but even more important challenges. And once again, I will put a plug for this, that the Center on Responsibility in AI, the RAISE, deals with some of these things. So we are not just talking about technologies to build this, but also asking tough questions about, well, what would it mean to have technology like this out? We talk about self-driving cars, fantastic. A lot of people get excited about it, but we still haven't figured out who takes responsibility when something goes wrong with a self-driving car. So I think there are a lot of these challenges, and that's why I think it's a very interdisciplinary issue that we all need to be at the table to address it.
Mhm. May I also offer another example that utilize multi-agent models for simulation? The scenario is when we know that like coaching teachers offering one-on-one mentor is quite a cost investment in K-12 settings, right? But teachers need regular sort of, they need self-growth, they need learning opportunities as well, and they need to bounce off idea with their colleagues too. So we design a simulation functionality on Colleague AI platform, aiming to offer teacher feedback. And what we aim for is actually when teacher utilizing our tool to develop a lesson plan, before they even walk into the classroom, the simulation function will help them to see how their lesson plan may unfold. So we have agents who represent students with different profiles. Then we have the teacher, then we have a coach or reviewers role, very much like a human coach, mentor, or principal would do, right? And so this couple of AI agents in the background simulate, act on the lesson plan, and then towards the end, the reviewer, the coach would summarize, synthesize what they observe through the simulation and see like, here are the aspects we recommend you to further improve about this one lesson plan. So that is one situation we are using in the way that we utilize as a way to offer information to teachers, and teachers still have the agency to decide what to take on, what to not take on. And the coach or the virtual coach, I'll ask the coach to cite sort of what works clearance house, those research-based instructional practice to have a sort of like specific domain knowledge that they have access to do the final sort of mentoring feedback to teachers. So all this to say that to our colleagues' point, we need to think about thoughtfully like what the AI is capable of doing, what the AI is not, and how do we still respect humans' creativity, agency, and expertise, and they're still at the driver of the whole decision making.
Thank you, Min. And the next question from our audience is in regards to partnerships. And the question is, how are partnerships influencing the current trajectory of AI research and implementation? Are there emerging trends in collaborative models, for example, public-private partnerships or academy industry collaborations that you think will shape the future of AI adoption?
I'm happy to get started on this one. I share part of my time with a nonprofit research institute called the Allen Institute for AI, which is down the street. also funded like the Allen School by Paul Allen. And AI2 has led a number of initiatives to carry out very open research on state-of-the-art artificial intelligence. So for example, this year we've released several iterations of an entirely open language model called Olmo, which is more open and available for researchers to make use of than any of the other strong models available. So not only the model weights for technical folks, but also the data that was used to train it and all of the code that you need to reproduce the results and documentation of everything that went in. I'm really proud of this project because it really is the kind of thing that the big tech companies would never do. And University of Washington was a major collaborator. A lot of our students were involved in this project. I think these kinds of efforts where we push AI in a more open source direction are absolutely essential for expanding participation in the research level, where we define what the capabilities are even going to be and understand them and develop methods for establishing what claims can and can't be made about the models. So I think that partnership in particular stands out in my mind as especially promising. It also puts UW at the very cutting edge and gives us kind of a force multiplier. By teaming with AI2, we can do things that we couldn't have done on our own. In terms of adoption, I personally take the view that people building the technology and advancing the fundamentals need to be engaged with potential user communities. And I'd like to see scientists and others at the university playing an active role in helping decide what gets built. I think personally that AI for scientific exploration has huge potential with a very different set of demands and capabilities than what's being built for general purpose use by the tech companies. So personally, I'd like to see more partnerships and very close engagement by the university communities so that we have a stronger say in what's getting built.
Yeah, I can say on the medical side, we have a lot of partnerships with different AI organizations. In radiology, we send images directly from the machine up to the cloud that go through AI processing and alert us for abnormalities when they're found. We have AI that interprets messages coming back from patients who have messages to their providers. We will soon have AI that will be able to listen to a conversation in a office visit and generate an office note automatically from that, not a dictation, but actually an AI understanding of the note. So lots of different vendors that we're working with. I think it's great that the UW and the resources that we have here are able to work on the basic foundations of these tools to really push the environment of how they can function. But I also think it's great that we have real world uses for these that we can work with vendors and fine tune how they can actually have immediate benefit for patients and for the public.
Thanks, Todd. I'm going to take some moderator privilege here. We've received a number of questions about the task force recommendation and report, and I'm going to use this time to quickly ask Andreas a question, which is that we've had a question about what we mean by AI specifically in the task force recommendation and report.
Thanks, Anin. Good question. And when we started off the task force, the guidance was clear. We are talking about artificial intelligence in the broad sense. And that means that we are talking about machine learning, natural language processing, and again, Gen AI, which is kind of the emerging technology that is happening now around AI, but really is a subset of that broader view, which was the charge for the task force. Of course, everyone is excited about Gen AI, so that was a focus of the task force, undoubtedly. But again, it was meant for that broader view on AI. And then, do you want to add anything to that?
Only that the field of AI is changing so quickly that there's an opportunity here. We don't want to overly constrain ourselves at this point with the field changing so quickly. Given the time, we probably have time for one more question. So I will ask, do any of you have tips for researchers who are not experts in AI, who want to collaborate with AI researchers in their work. What recommendations do you have on how that collaboration could occur?
So I guess I'm an AI researcher, so I can take a stab at this. I think, quite frankly, it's an incredibly weird time to be an AI researcher. Many people that you meet who identified that way did not go into the field thinking that it was going to be quite so impactful and such a big topic of discussion so fast. Personally, I thought I would retire before everyday people on the street knew what language models were and were using them every day. And that hasn't happened. I've still got a few years left, I think. So as you might imagine, those of us with expertise in AI are being inundated with really interesting emails from people who would like to collaborate with us and work with us. And that's exciting, but also overwhelming. So I would say keep trying. I think the more you know about AI, or the more your students already know, and can frame questions in a way that is accessible to a potential AI collaborator, and feel like this is a research question, rather than just sort of like we all have, science fiction imagination, and can imagine like it would be really cool to build X, and then you just email an AI professor and ask, will you work with me on this? Like, well, okay, the more you know, and the better you can frame your question and scope it in a way that will make sense to a researcher, the more likely you are to get a response. But I think what we're going to see is far more offerings across campus for people to learn the basics and become more fluent and more literate about what makes good questions and what kinds of applications are maybe in reach in the near term. And that's going to be very exciting. But I will say, I think our AI group and the faculty with the expertise to team up with you, there are not enough of us. And so hopefully we'll see growth in that area, and there'll be more of us to work with you, and more departments will be hiring AI experts who bridge into other areas. Because I'll say it again, I said it at the beginning, AI it has always been an interdisciplinary field. And so thinking about it as those folks over there have the expertise, and you have to approach us. I think it's grabbable by everybody. I think it can be much more accessible as a research field, not just as a product that you use.
Okay, I think we have, well, first of all, thank you, Todd. And I think we have time for one more question. I'm looking at the clock here. So we've talked a lot about how to use artificial intelligence. And the question is, in what areas do you think that the augmentation and automation provided by AI are simply inappropriate?
Can I answer that question without answering the question? which is to say, what I mean by that is a lot of these things, and I've talked about this in my own work when I talk about agents, that one of the things that is needed for a successful deployment of agents or sustainability is the social acceptability, and that's a moving target. So you can talk about the capabilities of things, and that's one thing. You can develop these things. These are technical problems. You can address that. But then you have to still address, the personal acceptability. Are we okay somebody responding our emails on our behalf, right? When would we be okay with? Maybe we'll be okay for some things, but not other things. And that's just the basic tasks that we do on everyday basis. Like, then you kind of get into a higher risky thing. Are you okay? The system driving your car. Are you okay it doing, making decisions on your behalf? Medical decisions, financial decisions, how to vote, who to vote. So I think some of these things, and we've seen this in the history of technology, that at times these are unheard of, unacceptable. Over time, some of that becomes okay, some are still not okay. So it's really hard. And then that's why I'm answering the question without answering the question, and just saying that it remains to be seen, because these are the functions of our society as opposed to individual, and not something that just researchers or educators can just drive. That's not something we just get to decide. It's something that we collectively, as a culture, as a community, decide. And typically, these kind of things take time. So as much as some people or many people got excited about what ChatGPT could do, there's a big difference between what it could do and it becomes acceptable in a lot of things. And then ChatGPT or these kind of AI generation thing, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's, when we talk about AI, it's much bigger, much broader than that. And in the meantime, a lot of things will fail. They will go out of sight, and that we won't even be talking about it. So I think this is a question that I think only time will tell. What we can do, and this is once again, I'll emphasize, is being responsible while building, designing these things, deploying this thing. And I think all of us in this room have a tremendous amount of, responsibility here, because we are in this position of being an educator, to train these next generations, to talk to our lawmakers, to talk to general public, and at least give them enough information, enough education, so that we can collectively make better decisions going forward.
I'll just chime in here because it seems like an easy question to answer, but I've had the privilege of being in the room with Tim Althoff, who's assistant professor in CS, and heard about his work at the intersection of mental health and AI. And if someone had told me before hearing about his work that, oh, we could have AI be kind of first tier one kind of mental health support, I would have said, oh, that's unconscionable. But then his work is amazing and it's helping people. So it's not an easy question to ask about what's off limits and what's acceptable, which gets back to the question that I was supposed to answer about policy. It's unclear that there's a policy path forward here.
Thank you, Penn. And the other panelists want to offer their view. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go into closing. We have a few minutes left. Before I turn it over to our panelists again for closing remarks, I want to remind everyone the email address for your question is townhall@uw.edu. There's a survey available on the Provost blog. I encourage you to engage with the survey and give us your thoughts and opinions. And remember, there are more town halls coming with dates to be determined. The first one, though, is on the 30th, and it's going to be about research. All that being said, I will now turn it over to our panelists for closing comments. And Penn, I'm going to go right back to you.
Okay. I guess my closing comment, and I'll be a little bit on a soapbox here, is that we should not imagine that AI can do the most important things we do as educators. And while I'm excited about many aspects of AI, I don't actually think it's going to revolutionize teaching. In almost every conversation that I've had with people who think deeply about teaching, the path forward in integrating AI into teaching is to double down on first principles of effective teaching. Yes, we can get excited about how AI can answer some of our students' questions, and answering questions is an important part of teaching, but the more important part of teaching is getting students to ask good questions and then helping them develop the ability to answer them themselves. So to me, the emergence of AI throws into even starker relief the importance of human instructors and the necessity of reflective, inclusive, and evidence-based pedagogies. So from a teaching standpoint, I think AI's chief value lies in the ways that it'll free up some instructor time so that instructors can spend a larger proportion of their time on teaching strategies that can help students feel welcome and valued, and help them develop the social and intellectual skills critical to healthy societies, including the ability to interact with each other and to see value in difference.
Thank you, Penn. I'll turn it over to Chirag.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for allowing me to be in part of this panel. It's been a great learning opportunity, and that's what I would emphasize from my personal view, that we're all learning. We're still trying to figure this out, right? Maybe this is what Noah was saying before, but back when I was a student, AI was a taboo word, right? I mean, even if you're doing AI, don't mention you're doing AI, because that meant you're not doing something important. So seeing the transition from that to this, it's I wouldn't have imagined. That being said, at the end of the day, it's this term that many of us don't fully agree with. I mean, when John McCarthy coined this term and we just came to accept it over these decades, I think when today we talk about AI, certainly it's not the same AI back when I was a student, and certainly, decades ago when this term was originally, used. But it doesn't matter. What matters is we are all interested in creating these opportunities that automate and augment and help us in ways that we couldn't have done before. Some of this will fail, some of these will be bad, but there are also a lot of good things, a lot of right things. So what I see is there's tremendous opportunities, some tremendous potential, but we have to do it the right way, the better way, the responsible way. And so we all have a role to play. We can sit on the sideline and have the world go in chaos, or we can be the part of this thing, including even saying, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Just what Penn was just saying, that it's a bad idea to do this in the education context, but somebody has to say that. And that those people need to have that credibility. So they need to be part of this. So don't stay on the sideline. That would be my message. And get engaged. That doesn't mean you have to be on board with everything that's happening, but be part of the discussion. I hope we don't get too carried out by either the hype or the fear, because neither of them are good. So I really hope that we can come together in these kind of discussions, even if we disagree. I think that's a healthy thing to do. And so I would just leave you with those thoughts that let's do this collectively. Let's do this the right way.
Thank you, Chirag. I'll turn it over to Noah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll be brief. I would say in closing, I would encourage everyone in our academic community to resist the frames of the most extreme voices in this discourse. And by that, I'm referring to both the companies that are selling AI products and creating all the hype, and also many of the most fearful voices that are viewing this as AI is going to take over. It's going to be a revolution. This is just not the way we look at it in the community of experts who actually study and build AI. At the end of the day, AI is going to be what we make it. We have agency, and being here at the University of Washington, you are in a position to play a role in that. So I agree with Chirag.
Thank you, Noah. And Min, you get the final word.
Wow, what a privilege. Thank you. I am very honored to be invited to share some of our work and thoughts with you all, and definitely echo on the learning opportunity ourselves to interact with other panelists as well. So I would definitely agree with our colleagues, what they just summarized and shared. And while we are in the community to contribute to AI innovation, at the same time, we need to think about not just the ethical challenge, but also practical challenges. If you are doing the work as we're doing, actually developing applications and help school districts to implement in authentic settings across different contexts, right? So the challenge come with that as well. And one last thing, which is, I believe some of the questions from the audience also touch base. I was thinking about it in terms of the partnership and who should be at the table. For us, we are developing education technology. We feel the end users, students, teachers should be at each stage of the technology development. They shouldn't be the afterthought after the technology being developed and then introduced to them, ask them to use it, right? So they should be at each stage of the technology development. They're co-designers, they're co-developers. And that's probably one of the most effective approach in my career so far. I discovered that you can combat and mitigate many of the issues we discussed today. So let me end with there, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Min. And before we put a bow on this, I just want to say thank you as well. Thank you to Provost Serio for opening this event. Thank you to the panel, my co-chair, Anand, and of course, the support team that made this all happen, along with our ASL interpreters who are with us today. Thank you all very, very much. Before I turn it over to Anand for some closing thoughts, I want to plug 3 things. Town hall at UW.edu, Provost blog, there's a survey there, please take it. And there are more town halls coming, the next one being research on the 30th of this month. Anand, what do you think? Want to close us out?
Sure, just a few last words. Let me echo Andreas's thanks, and let me add my thanks to those of you in the audience who shared your questions with us and those who are just viewing. Please do respond to the survey. It closes out tomorrow, and do participate in the other town halls. Our biggest request is to keep engaging in this topic so that we can put our unique University of Washington stamp on the future of artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, everyone.